Objective 1, naming polynomials. So in Module 4, you'll be working with a variety of different polynomials, so it's very important to understand how to classify them or name them based on their highest power and the number of terms that exist within the polynomial. So to begin this, I'm going to cover some guided notes to introduce the topic, so please follow along as I fill in the blanks here. So blank in an algebraic expression are separated by a plus or minus sign. So I'm going to call them terms. Terms exist within a polynomial. Some examples of what terms look like are 6x squared, 7, 4x to the fourth, x cubed, something like that. Where they could be, terms may then consist of a number and a variable, or both. So in this case, this term, 7, is only a number. This term, x cubed, is only a variable, and this term, 6x squared, has both a number and a variable in it. So terms can exist in all three formats. To continue on, a blank is an algebraic expression with only one term. So if there is a algebraic expression, a polynomial with only one term, it is called a monomial. That is the beginning and the most basic polynomial. Blank is an expression made up of two terms, or the sum or difference of two monomials, and this is called a binomial. So, for example, a monomial looks like something like negative 4x squared. A binomial could be this term, negative 4x squared, plus x, something like that. Where the monomial only has one term, the binomial has two terms. Moving on, a polynomial can be named based on its number of terms and its highest power. And I'm going to put in parentheses degree. So, degree is the largest slash highest, same thing, exponent in a polynomial. Or if there are multiple variables with multiple powers per term, the highest power that exists, the highest power of exponents in a term that exists. So for example, 6x to the fourth plus x cubed minus 2x. The highest power that exists between these two terms in this polynomial is 4. So this polynomial is degree 4. So that's how you would name this, based off of the highest power that exists. So let's move into how do I actually name them. Then the first name comes from, I just said it, the highest power that exists in the polynomial. Degree 0, so if there is no degree, I'll put an example down. Let's say it's just the number 8. All this is a constant. It doesn't have a power, it's just a number. Degree 1, so any linear term variable. I'm going to just use an example of x. This is called linear. Degree 2, so x squared, highest power of 2. This is called quadratic. We've been working with quadratics up until now in modules 2 and 3. Degree 3, so x cubed. This is called cubic. Degree 4, x to the 4th, is called quartic. And finally, the highest power we're probably going to be working with, degree 5, x to the 5th, for example, is called quintic. So the first name of the polynomial comes from the highest power that exists, or the degree. Highest power / degree. The last name comes from the number of terms that exist. So, in this case, we're just going to name up to 3-termed polynomials. You might see 4-term polynomials or 5th-term polynomials, but in this case, I just want you to worry about up to the 3rd or 3 terms, naming that. So the first term we already talked about is a monomial. So again, something like 7x to the 4th. If that was just what existed, that would be a monomial because there's only one term. I know there's a couple pieces that make up that one term, but it's just one term. Second one is called, if there's 2 terms, it's called a binomial. So something like 7x to the 4th plus 2x. That has 2 terms in it, it's called a binomial. And the third term is called, if there's 3 terms within a polynomial, it's called trinomial. So something like x squared minus 6x plus 5. Something like that. And we've been working with trinomials again, and we've been working specifically with quadratic trinomials. In this module, we're going to be working with higher powered polynomials, and even getting into solving polynomials. But these are the 3 term names that we are going to consider. 1, 2, and 3. So please familiarize yourself with the highest power names, these 5, and then down here, those 3. Because as you work with, the next objective is going to be to perform operations on polynomials. In your final answer, you're going to have to be able to name based off of the degree and the number of terms to finalize the answer. Let's look at a couple examples before the end of this video. So let's name some of them based off of this practice. And so let's say I had solved a polynomial, or an operation on a polynomial, and these on the left-hand side were my answers. So the first example, example 1, if I was going to look at this, I see that it's 3x squared. So the first thing I have to consider is the degree. What is the highest power? In this case, the highest power is just the linear x, meaning that x, whenever there isn't a power that's distinguished, I can assume that it's raised to 1. And so the highest power in this case is 1. So if I go back to my table and down to the degree, if the highest power is 1, then I know it to be linear. So the degree is 1, I know it to be linear. Then I look at the number of terms. In this case, there's one term, 3x, and then there's a second term, 2. So the number of terms is 2. So the last name is binomial. So to finalize, to put it all together, this would be a linear binomial. And the graph of this would be a line. Makes sense. The graph is always based off of the degree that exists. And since the degree is linear, it makes sense that linear would make a line. Let's move on to example 2, right here. Same thing, the degree. What is the highest power that exists in this polynomial? In this case, I see 2 a's. This a, though, has a highest power of 1. So the highest power that exists in total of the terms is here, 2. So the highest degree in this case is 2, which means if I look back at my table, if it's a degree 2, I know it to be quadratic. So back here, I know that the first name of this polynomial is quadratic. Now, to get the last name, I have to look at the number of terms. I see one term, a squared, second term, minus 3a, and then the third term, plus 5. So I know that this one has 3 terms, so I know that this is a trinomial. So the final name, first and last name of this example number 2 is quadratic trinomial. And here's a graph of a quadratic trinomial. This you should be very familiar with. It's called a polynomial. Go ahead and try the next 2 examples, example 3 and example 4 on your own. And please raise your hand when you're done so that I can check your work to make sure you understand that the first process, again, that I would think of is I have to determine the degree or highest power. So I'll even write highest power here. That's what I'm considering. So once I consider the degree, then that'll tell me the first name based off the chart we just completed on the previous page. After the degree, I look to the second last name, which is based on the number of terms. In that case, I would count the number of terms that exist in the polynomial, look at my chart to see what the last name is as well. So go ahead and try 3 and 4, and then raise your hand when you are done so we can discuss them.